So this is the Noetic collection, and I think I released this about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And if I go ahead and just pull this over and pull this down, you guys know where the chat box is if you have any questions. Then this is the ArtPlay palette collection. So I was kind of thinking of something a little bit moody, a little bit festive, because of course we've got Thanksgiving if you're in the States coming up in 2 weeks. If you are in Canada, I know you had your Thanksgiving last month. So I feel like the gold is really good for that. And then, I don't know, just the colors going into winter, a little bit somber. So that was kind of the idea behind this collection. And I just love leaves because I think that they just work. I think they work for heritage pages. I think they work for full pages. I just think that they work at any time of year. And they work for masculine and feminine layouts as well. So I'm just a big fan of the whole leaf motif. And then, of course, I designed these photo blends clipping masks. These are layered clipping masks that coordinate with the papers in the ArtPlay palette. And then these also coordinate with these fun little frames and the threads. I love the threads on these. So we're going to work with those. And then we've got the layered template here and some nifty word art. I'm really in love with this wood style that I've created at the moment. So I've been using that quite a bit. And then we have the ArtsyKardz, which I like to use with the photo inspired. And they're also really good with templates. And you can do some fun little layouts with those, use them as clipping masks and to create backgrounds. We've got the ArtsyTransfers, which of course are the layered transfers, whereas in the ArtPlay palettes, we have the just the single layer PNG format. And then this is the little bonus that I put together. So we've got a 5th Artsy paper here, and we've also got some word art and some layout ideas, and then this fun little multimedia element. And then included with the companion sets, I did some button threads because they're one of my favorite things, not necessarily button threads, but just stitching in general. I love to add those to my layouts. And then also I thought it was time to do some more paper textures. So we're going to go ahead and play with those too. So I think I'm going to get started with the template. Mainly because I had this idea, when you have a template, let's talk about like modifying the template. So here's the template, and it comes with basically all the layers in PSD format, and we've got your frames and you've got your title placement here, and then also your journaling. So say, for example, so this is really designed to coordinate with 3 photos. So you could blend a photo in on this page here, and then you also have these 2 frames here. So I consider this sort of a 3 photo template. But say, for example, I want to just have 1 photo on this template. Then what I would do is probably place my cursor in the layers panel kind of on top of all of the transfer layers, but below the frame layers. And then I would bring in one of the photo blends clipping masks. And I just want to look at the Artsy papers here for a moment. You can see this is what the Artsy paper looks like, and it also has a dark background. So you can choose to use the same color background, or maybe you want to try a different background. So I could just select all of these backgrounds and sort of drag them in. And of course, I've set my cursor in the wrong place in the template because I was going to bring in a clipping mask, but that's fine. I can bring those in, select them, and then drag them down to the bottom and kind of put them in the background here. So I have 3 different background options, and I can sort of turn off the visibility on and off of these layers to see which one I like best. And I do actually like this gray one. So that's the one I'm going to keep. And then I'll return my cursor back to that location in the layers panel where I'm going to have my introduce my photo blends clipping mask. And the reason I like to look at the papers is because I generally create the photo blends and if there are any frames in order. So we would be looking at photo blends number 4 in order to fit on this paper. Everything is designed to coordinate to make it super easy for you to put these elements together. So I'm going to head into the Noetic photo blends, and these are delivered in 2 different folders, mainly because I like to keep the file sizes around 100 megabytes. Most people have got fast internet these days, but there are still some of you who live in remote areas, and so that can be problematic. So just keeping those file sizes small, I think is helpful. And so then I'm going to access this photo blends. This is number 4. This is the one that coordinates. And so you've got a couple of options here. You have the PNG file of the complete clipping mask. And then you have the elements in different layers here. And this is really for those of you who are working in programs outside of Photoshop. I don't think that there's anyone here doing that, but I do have customers that are using different programs. And so this allows them to be able to bring these files into their workspace and sort of drag them in. And so you can kind of then place them according to how you think they're going to go, like that. So I could have just brought in the PSD file, but I just wanted to show you how that works. And then probably what I'm going to do here is I'm going to group these layers. I'm going to select all of those layers in the layers panel and go to layer, group layers. And so that way I have all of those layers together. And if I wanted to, I could group some of these other layers, but I'm not going to do that right now. So once I have my photo, my clipping mask in place here, I'm then going to go and select some photos. And I pulled up last year, mainly because I don't have too many photos of this year, but Eric and I took a trip to Grand County last year. And I think I worked with some of these photos last time. But anyway, I figured that I would just bring in one of these photos just to sort of demonstrate. So let me bring this one in here and see how this one goes. So I'm going to drag this over. And so I've got 2 options. I can clip it to the group of layers by going to layer, create clipping mask, and that's going to clip it to all of them. But it really kind of negates the ability that we have here to work with the layers. So I would prefer to bring this in here and then clip the photo just to the clipping mask layer. That way we still retain this really great texture that's around the outside of our mask. So I can move this around, and then I can also play with these different layers here. So this, for example, is quite stark. It's quite dark. So what I would do is go to Edit Fill, ensure I have that Preserve Transparency box checked, and then perhaps select a color around the edge here. So maybe we go with something a little lighter with that teal, and then click OK. And then maybe change the blending mode too. So there's multiply, there's linear burn, there's color burn. I typically go with linear burn. That seems to be my favorite. And then you can kind of change the size of this if you want to. You can change the rotation. If you don't love the color, then you can go to Image Adjustments, Hue and Saturation in Elements. That's Enhance, Adjust Color, Hue and Saturation, and you can change it. So maybe more of a brown tone. So that's kind of the beauty of that there. The other thing that you can do too is you can, if you want to have some of the background show through, then you could select that layer, that clipping mask layer, and you could play around with the blending mode. So that one is kind of fun because it brings some of the artistry through the photo without you having to do too much blending. I kind of like that one too. Darken. These ones are a bit dark. These are a little bit too light. This one's kind of fun too, but it kind of takes away the whole point of having Eric in the picture there. I like that one too. So maybe I'll go with that one. That's pretty neat because it gives you the artistry, and then it also has Eric in there as well. And if I wanted to duplicate that layer, if I select the clipping mask or the clipping set, so that's the clipping mask with the photo attached to it, and duplicate that, that's going to intensify that. And I can, of course, change the opacity of that. And I could also play around with a different blending mode too if I wanted to. So you can kind of stack these up a little bit. I actually quite like it the way it was. I think it was on overlay. So I think I'm going to keep it like that. And that way we have some of this artistry coming through. So what I was saying earlier is I have room here if I wanted to bring in 2 more photos, but if I don't want to add photos into those frames, what I could do is I could just turn off those layers. So if I go ahead and select all of these layers and group those, then I can turn off the visibility in one fell swoop. So I can turn those off if I wanted to, and then I could maybe bring down the text so it doesn't look a little bit awkward, and I can add the text there, and then I could add in a title over here. So let's do that real quick. So I could type the title in. Typically, I will bring in some word art. I just add that as a sort of a title placement. So if we go and we take a look at our text here, and I'm looking at this area here, it's quite small. So I would be, if I wanted to put the title there, I could actually put the title over here now that we've got rid of those frames. So I'm sort of looking at 2 different spots for the titles and just paying attention to the space available so I can choose a title that's going to fit nicely into there, into that area. And I don't know if this is gonna, maybe some days will work for this. Sometimes there isn't any text that's going to fit. So I could add that in there. That would go there. It could even go here. It's a little bit large. Maybe add it down here. That's a good place for it. So I have the title down there. Maybe I want to bring in this beaded threads too. Oh no, not sad. We don't want sad. So we'll keep that out as there as is. So I could finish it like that if I wanted to, and then just bring in a some elements. So I don't have any multimedia elements with this collection, so I have to build my own, or I could go back into a previous collection and borrow elements from there. But I'm going to just go into the elements of the ArtPlay palette and see what we have available, and maybe try a couple of these. So this is the only downfall of having these PSD files in different folders, is that you can't drag them all in at once. So the idea here would be to just sort of build some elements to sort of fill this space here. So I'm just going to bring a couple of elements in and see how we go. This ribbon might be fun. See if that works. Now you want to make sure that you drag these PSD files into the background so that you retain both layers. That means when I bring these in, then I have the ability to be able to change the intensity of the shadow. I can also change the color of the shadow if I wanted to. I can also change how the shadow is warped. So if I go to edit, transform, and go like this, then I can kind of move the shadow around in the background. So that's the reason I like to have these elements on 2 different layers. That way you have the ability to customize if you want to. It's always a good idea to close out these files as you're using them, so you don't end up with too many in your workspace, because then it becomes a little bit distracting sometimes, I think. So maybe we add this flower in. And so you can see how I'm sort of building that up. Now, I did release some really fun stitching in the companion sets with this collection. So if we go and check out those, the button threads. So these are specifically designed to attach buttons to your pages. But I also like to just use them to kind of combine elements together. You can see this one has sort of a kind of a cross stitch, and you can see where the holes of the buttons would be. But sometimes it's fun just to add them because it looks like you can kind of stitch them onto your design. So I like to use those, and you can also double up too. So say, for example, let's add this one. We could add 2 of these on here and have them sort of in different places so that we've got long stitching. We could even add in a 3rd one if we wanted to. Let's see this one and drag this in. And you can see how these then work to adhere this branch to our design. I don't know if this one is going to work as well, because you can see the shadow is sort of far away. But you can kind of play around and have these like this. What I like about this thread here is that it's a really fun place to put a button. So if I wanted to go back to my elements, then I could grab one of these buttons that come with the the ArtPlay palette. So I have the option to be able to place this button behind the stitching. And notice how that then might need to make it a bit smaller. This one's buttons are a little smaller. So maybe I have to make that a little bigger if I wanted to do that. But you could, that's the way you would adhere the buttons, is that way. You could also make the stitching a little bit smaller too to get it to fit. But I like the circle on this. I would be more inclined to place the button over this circle like this, and then attach or apply a drop shadow layer style by going to layer style and drop shadow. And that's a little bit large, that drop shadow. So I'm going to just go ahead and make that a bit smaller just so it doesn't pop off the page. So that works. We've got a nice little design going on here, and I would just add my journaling here. Now, if I decided I wanted to include those frames, I could bring those back, and that actually works pretty well with the embellishment that I already have here. But if I don't have photos to go into those frames, one of the fun things that you can do is you can use ArtsyKardz. So this is another way to use your ArtsyKardz. This works really well in template albums if you're working with a template design in a double layout and you don't have enough photos to fill the template, and you don't necessarily want to remove the frames because it's going to change the overall appearance of the layout design, then you can go ahead and you can use these ArtsyKardz. So I've still got the previews in here, but you get these folders, and I always kind of move the JPEG files outside of the folders, basically because I can see them all together then, and I want to make sure that there's A, not too much overlap, and B, it's easy access when I want to pull them in. So I'm going to grab a couple of these. Notice too that you can also rotate these. So I could grab this one and then maybe this one, or even this one, just drag them all in. And because they're JPEG files, I can pull them directly onto my canvas. Now, the way I have Photoshop set up, it's actually expanding the size of these cards. This card is actually only a 6x6. So I'm actually going to cancel that action. And I need to go in and change that setting in my Photoshop. But so in the meantime, I'm just going to pull these into the background. And then if I drag this now on top, let's go back to this one. This is the proper size of it. So be careful of that when you're dragging in these ArtsyKardz. You don't want to stretch them too much because, of course, you're going to get all sorts of pixelation then. So I basically have this ArtsyKardz and I've placed it over the top of the frame mask. And I'm going to go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask. And then I can sort of move this around. I can make it smaller if I want to. I can rotate it. All sorts of ways. So maybe have it like that. I like how the blue pulls in the blue in the background here. And then I have this one here. This one could go in this place. Let's move this up out of the way and drag this over. And then go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask. So I can add that in like that. It might also let me rotate it. So you consider rotating these all the way around. I kind of like that because I like how we have the leaves coming up from the bottom and then coming down from the top. So that's another way you could use the ArtsyKardz, and another way you can use the frames in your template. I'm actually going to tone the color down in this a little bit. I feel like it's a little bit bright. So with these photo layers selected, I'm just going to go to Image Adjustments, Hue and Saturation, and just bring down the saturation a little bit. Because I added that overlay blending mode, I feel like it's intensified the color of the photo a little bit more than I would like. But I do like how that texture is coming through. And I like how you can see Eric here. What I might do here is I feel like this black, I've talked about this before, but I feel like this black is really stark. So I'm going to go to Edit Fill, and I'm perhaps going to sample a color. So if you click around, you can see the different colors that you can get. So lots of browns, but I'm thinking I kind of want like a navy color. So if I click into this area here, I can get a navy. And sometimes if you can't get close enough, then you can just kind of click darker, because I wanted blue. but that doesn't seem dark enough for me. So if I just click down a little bit, then I get that similar sort of shade, but it's a bit darker. And then with that preserve transparency box checked, I'm going to click OK. And it's just a super subtle change, but sometimes it can make a difference. And if I want to lighten it up, I can go to levels and I can make that a bit lighter if I want to. So maybe like that. And then I think I just want to have something there just to anchor that to the design. So I'm going to go to my Remember Word Art mix here. And let's see what we've got in the way of these word labels. So we've got fourth, forget, and miss. So I think I'm going to go with this middle one and just add that into the background and just place it behind the title and just layer that up. And that sort of connects then this artistry with this artistry here. And I think I am going to call that layout good. So I'm going to save this, go to File, Save As, and then I'm just going to add this as Eric Grand County. And I'm just going to put a number in front of it so I know which order these go in. I can't see my save button because of all these boxes on my screen. Okay. Like that. So that's our first layout using the template, just a different way to use the template with the photo blends. And I'm going to click that and close that out and then close this out, close all of our layers out or files out. And then I'm going to create a new layout. And this time I am going to take a look. What should we go with this time? Any requests? I'm going to see if there are no questions yet. So that's good. We are just rolling along. So we have, let's go to the bonus ArtPlay. So this is the bonus collection that you get if you purchase the entire collection. So the complete collection, I should probably point out here, is usually 5 products. So I usually do 5 products. And then if you buy all the 5 products, then you get the 6th product for free. And then I bring out the ArtsyKardz and the transfers, and then I've been adding in a couple of other companion sets. And those usually happen on a Wednesday. I often get asked, why don't I bundle it all together? And it's basically because it takes me a whole week to complete the 5 products in the ArtPlay palette collection. And then it takes me another week to complete the companion pieces. So I break it up into 2 sets. And I also think that it's a better price point too. If I were to bundle it all together, it might be too much for some people. So this is the collection, and then these are the add-on pieces, depending on how you like to work and the different types of products. There are definitely people who enjoy the ArtsyKardz, and there are definitely people who prefer the ArtsyTransfers. I would say I always like to challenge myself to use the ArtsyKardz, just because I think that it's fun to play with a product that you don't typically play with and learn something new and just kind of try something different. I get bored quite easily, so I like them for that. But ArtsyTransfers are probably one of my go-to products, along with stitching. And I love these PaperTextures, and we haven't used those yet, so maybe we'll try and use those in this next layout. So here's the bonus. Here's the preview. So here's the element. This is the element in its kind of combined format. There's the PSD file. And then, of course, for my friends who are not working in Photoshop, you have all of these layers that you can layer up yourself if you're not working with layered PSD files. Then we have these really fun layout ideas. So I show you basically how all the pieces can go together to create 5 different layouts. And then we have this bonus papery. So this is the one I want to work with. So I'm going to drag this in, and I'm going to drag it directly onto my new layout design. I have a really bad habit of just opening up the paper and working on the paper. It's fine to do that, because in reality, how often are you going to use the same kind of background paper for multiple layouts? Probably not. You're probably going to use the same paper multiple times, but maybe not as a layout foundation. But if you're working on the actual background paper and you accidentally save over it, then it's just a pain to have to go to Viki and re-download it. So it's always just good practice to drag that paper onto the background. Another thing too is that these backgrounds are in JPEG format. So every time you open and close them and you mess with them, manipulate, work with them, then there's pixelation that happens. It alters the pixels. So that's another reason to always kind of open it, create a copy, and then work with the copy and close out the original so that you're just not playing around with it too much. So I prefer personally to use the Artsy paper designs because they save you time. And of course, there is a photo blends clipping mask that comes with that. You notice that there are 5 different photo blends clipping masks. So if we go and take a look at those photo blends and click on this one here, then you can see we've got these different versions. This time I'm going to pull in the PSD file. And again, you want to pull that into the background and not directly onto your canvas, because otherwise you're going to lose the ability to access all of these individual layers. And you can see that this fits quite perfectly onto the design. So it's really easy to kind of just snap in there. And then I want a photo for my collection. So maybe we'll go with, we don't want Eric again, we want something different. The trees are so pretty in Colorado during the fall. So this one's kind of fun. Let's try this one. I never quite know if a photo is going to work until you sort of add it in there. We might just move away from the, it's coming in as a smart object because I think I've clicked on the, I clicked on too many things. Okay, it's good. We have it in here like that. So let's close this out. It looks a little pixelated, that. I don't know if it's because I was moving the camera. So I'm clipping that photo, and that actually looks pretty good, actually. Surprisingly, I didn't think that was going to work. But if you're tired of looking at full photos, then we can also go into, let's see what else we've got going on in here. We've got Sweet Ella. Miss seeing her little face around here. So let's bring her into the mix here. And I'm just going to pull this out because I feel like for some reason, my settings have changed. So let's add this in and clip this in like that. So I could also have this here. I don't necessarily love the colors. So what I might do here is kind of change this to black and white. Let's go ahead and desaturate that. Maybe play around with the curves, make this a little brighter. I'll switch over to my pen like this. And then it's always kind of fun if you've got 2 photos to kind of play around with the blending and see what you can come up with. Sometimes you can get some really fun results. So that's kind of fun. Let's move this around. I'm going to unselect that. So we can have a little bit of fun here. Because why not? It's Friday night. So we could play around with kind of using this as a kind of a background to our photo. And because it's in the background, I'm not too worried about it being stretched too much. I mean, ideally, you want to have a better, I don't know, there's something about this that I like, but I can't get the actual photo. Let's bring it over here like this. So that's too pixelated. So maybe I'm kind of intrigued about this process. So let's go back and see if we can find a different photo that's maybe going to work. Maybe this one would be better.
That's pretty.
Yeah, and I think I have some where I actually had used my my big camera, these ones here. So these might be a larger size. So let's bring this in. I want to see if I can get the photo to sort of blend. Oh, this one's even worse. But that's kind of fun. So anyway, so you could do something fun like that and play around with, maybe make this lighter in the background. I like the sort of silhouette that's going on. I wonder if we duplicate this layer, it'll be darker. So you can have lots of fun with blending modes. I'm just playing around with the blending modes here. And I don't know if I love this. Maybe I kind of liked having it sort of halfway through. Now, one of the things you can do is you can see this blue in the background here. It doesn't quite reach over the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select my paintbrush tool, and I'm going to grab my Anna Blend's Artsy brush, and I'm just going to sample that color. And I'm just going to kind of go over that like that. So I'm going with this just because it's kind of fun. And maybe because now we've got this kind of super dark, fun background, maybe we'll take this background here and we'll mess around with that a little bit. So I could play around with making it darker. Or, and it looks like this doesn't quite come to the edge. So I'm just going to pull that over, or I can duplicate this layer and I can maybe start playing around with different blending modes. So I can make this much darker, which is kind of fun. I think I want to go lighter, but maybe the color burn is cool, or the linear burn. And you can always use the opacity slider. Yeah, I don't know if I'm loving this, but we'll keep going with it. So I'm now changing the blending mode of the backgrounds to see if there's kind of some fun ways to mess around with that. But there's nothing that I really love, and I don't want to spend the time on it. Maybe change, oops, we need to bring this back to normal. And this needs to be normal. Almost feels a little dark. Oh, that one's kind of fun. See, I'm just playing here, and this is really what I do when I'm just by myself, is I just kind of get in there and I just experiment and play. And some of the experiments, they don't work out as well, and sometimes they do. So I could just keep it like that if I wanted to. I could also change the order of this and then maybe apply a blending mode this way and see if it kind of makes a difference. It kind of works out the same way, it looks like. I mean, you could get really complicated and start masking areas out, but
what about a more sepia black and white that kind of goes with the browns?
Yeah, I could do that, I guess. So my favorite way of doing sepia is to kind of select a really dark brown and then kind of select a white-ish. And so I have, and then I go to image adjustment and gradient map. That's the way I tend to do sepia. I know it's not everybody does it that way. There's different ways to do it. You could also do it with an adjustment layer. I think you can do it with a photo filter. You could also do it with a solid color fill layer. But this is just the way that I've always done it. But I could play around with the blending modes that way too. I kind of like that dark, that brown. So maybe we'll go with that. And then I don't love this dark texture at the top here, this black. So I would probably do the same with that. Go ahead and kind of fill those in. And maybe change the blending mode. Grab this one, whoops. Got to be careful not to move the layers, of course. Oh, I don't like that. So maybe keep that one as normal. So yeah, and then you can go down the bottom here and you can kind of play around. You can pull these out a little bit if you wanted to. So you can have some black, you can have some brown, you can change the blending mode. That's kind of fun with the red. It's bringing out these dark colors. So once you have your kind of photo situated, which is, I think, kind of where I'm at this point, I am noticing one of the things you want to be careful about when you have these blending modes is you want to make sure you get rid of all the harsh lines. You can see there's a line there. So I'm just going to increase the size of that a little bit just so it covers the mask. And then let's go and see what we have in the way of words. So typically I'll create the foundation or choose my foundation. I add the photo and blend it or add a frame. And that's the other thing we can do too, is we can bring in a frame if we want to. So, oh, this is perfect. Missed you. So let's add this in here like this. And I'm going to add this down here because I like how this art stroke sort of leads the eye down. So we can add that like that. And then maybe go and get some elements. And this time I'm going to try this one, see if how this one works. We also have the multimedia element that comes with the bonus too, so I can try that. Whoops. You have to be careful when you have that auto select option checked because it's really easy just to grab hold of a layer and move it. So that kind of works like that. Yeah. You could have that in. And I like how it connects again with the transfer there. We also have where's the bonus? Here we go. Let's bring in that element. Drag this into the background. Close this guy out. So typically with these multimedia elements, I'll just drag the whole thing onto the design and then kind of reassess which of the elements that I want. Or maybe I'll take the element and I'll just sort of move it around. So maybe we'll add this over here, maybe rotate it. And then we've got this brown splatter here. Can add that there. And it's much darker than this one. So I'm inclined to make that a little bit darker. So it sort of matches. And then we've got these fun sort of magic sprinkles here, which I actually quite like the way they are. But if I wanted to change the color of those, you can see right now that they're sort of a silver color. But if I want to make them gold, then I would select that layer. You can see there's a drop shadow layer and a star layer. You could go to Image Adjustments, Hue and Saturation, and then just click on this Colorize option, and then move this slider, and you can see that it sort of becomes pink or blue or maybe gold. Gold is kind of the color I'm going with. If you want it brighter, you can bring up the saturation. So you can change the color of those that way. And then sometimes, because we've kind of altered the intensity of the colors in this layout, I feel like that these elements are a little bit drab now. So I'm going to take that ribbon, I'm going to duplicate it, and then maybe add overlay to that. Notice how that pops. And then maybe we do the same with this berries, this leaf element. We can kind of make that pop a little bit more. That vivid light's too much, but overlay works pretty well, and so does soft light. You'd also play around with maybe making it lighter using screen and then duplicating. So you've seen me do that with a photo, but it also works with elements and it makes those pop. And if it's too much, then you just go in and you just adjust the opacity. So you can use blending modes to kind of make those elements pop, but that works pretty well too. And then maybe we will go and add in some of those stitching elements. So I'm going to go and grab one of those. So maybe this one we'll use this time. Drag this in, maybe bring it to the top. Oops. Grab that. So we can play around with the placement of that. So maybe add that in like that. You can even rotate it. So I could leave it like that if I wanted to. The other thing I could do if I wanted, I could bring in some paper textures. So if I want to use the paper textures, you've got two options. You can use these as overlays and just drag them in. So if I want to bring this in, for example, I can drag it in. I'm not going to place it directly onto my canvas because I'm afraid it's going to stretch it, and I want to see it in its kind of real format. But I can bring this in like this and play around with the, maybe add a linear blending mode. It's a little small. The other option of being able to use these paper textures is to open up your brushes panel. So go to Window and go to Brushes. And then if I scroll down to the bottom here, we have a bunch of different brushes, but we can go to our paper textures. I'm going to bring in the large. Now there are two different brushes here. If you're new to my brushes, the large ones are basically for PSCC, so Creative Cloud. And they are for Photoshop Elements version 15 and above. So anything below that doesn't support brushes larger than 2500 pixels. So I include that brush set in this other brush set here. Because I'm working in Photoshop CC, then I can use the large brushes. So that's what I'm going to do. Just going to drag them and drop them into that brushes panel. You can see now that they drop into the folder there. And so now I have access and I can use them using the brush tool. And so this gives me just a bit more flexibility in being able to pick a color and also being able to change the size on the fly. So maybe I want to add this brush in and just stamp it. Now it is important when you add a new brush layer that you create a new layer. So that way you have your brushes on different layers. So you can see there's one brush layer, there's a second brush layer, and then you can change the blending modes independently. And so this is just a fun way you can add some texture to your photos. Got some more paper textures there. Let's go down to these ones, maybe add this one in here like that. Did someone have a question? Nope. Okay. So anyway, so that's kind of fun. It adds a cool sort of, it tones down some of the white and it adds some texture into that photo. So you can add those in like that. The other way you can do this is, or another option here would be to use the frames, which we haven't looked at yet. So we have these urban frames, and I think there's only 4 frames. So we'd have to maybe, let's try this one, see if this one's going to work. But the idea of these frames is to kind of sit on top of the clipping mask. So we could add this in here if we wanted to. I don't know if that's ideal. I only did 4 frames because they're quite time consuming, these frames. So there isn't actually one that matches with the paper 5, but I'm sure that one of these will go pretty well. So this one works well. So let's take that one in and we'll delete this one. And I probably want to reposition this so that it sits behind all of those fun elements that we have. Seems to be a lot. So we add that in there. And I'm just going to go ahead and turn off those. Let's group those layers, turn off those paper layers. So this is another option here. And then if I go ahead and just duplicate those 2 photos of Ella and drag them up and pull them on top of the frame layer, then I can go to layer, create clipping mask, and I can add that on like that. And I may want to move this just slightly, just so we have more of a view of her. It's kind of funny the way I like how the stitching kind of attaches to her glasses. My suggestion, if that doesn't work, would be to turn that off, but I actually like the stitching on there. I think it adds a fun component into the mix. And then of course I could add my journaling. My favorite way to add the journaling is to access the template, grab the template in, and then just pull one of these text boxes over and then add it in. And then you can change it by selecting the type tool, clicking in the text, and just pulling out the sides to kind of resize and reformat that text box. So there's a fun little place to add the text in there. So I'm going to call that one good and go ahead and save that. So let's call this to Ella. Miss you. Okay. Like that. So that's the second layout. And then I guess the third one, we'll just play around with, what haven't we played with yet? So let's do a layout from scratch. So if we go back to our ArtPlay palettes here, we have not the elements, we have the paperies. So we have all 4 of these different artsy papers that we could use, but we've already used one of those. So let's bring in some of the papers. Before I do that, I'm going to be a good teacher and create a new layout. And then maybe, again, I like to have like a number of different choices. So I'm going to select these 3 different solids, and I'm just going to drag them all in and drop these onto my canvas. That way I can kind of switch off those layers and find the best fit for my photo. And then maybe we'll go and take a look at the transfers. We haven't played with those yet. So we've got all of these different transfers. So I'm going to randomly just select a bunch of them. And as you can see, I'm selecting quite a lot of them, and that's okay, because we can just pull them in. I'm hoping that you see, it's funny how some of them are placing properly and other ones are expanding. I don't know why that's the case. But we have all these different layers, and I like to have all these different layers on here because then I can just sort of move them around. And then I can also play around with different backgrounds too. So if I want to switch off different backgrounds to see what they're going to look like, then I can do that. So, and I'm not going to keep all of these layers, but it's just kind of fun to have them in there just to see what might work and what does not. So I quite like that. I always kind of think that this is a lot like a jigsaw puzzle. You've got all these different pieces and you've got to kind of fit them together to see if they're going to work. See, I don't know if that one is going to work. So we're just going to turn off the visibility instead of deleting it. And then with these paper textures, I like to add the linear burn. You can see what a difference it makes when you add that linear burn, and that sort of fits over here like this. We already have that layer on there. So maybe turn that off for now. Kind of like that on there. I'm not sure about this color in the background here. You can also play around with rotating these too. Rotating them and changing the size or the color. I think I'm going to go ahead and turn this one off. And then this is going to be a bit much too, I think. You can change the order of the layers. So let's go ahead and turn that off. I kind of do it by a process of elimination. You know, do I like it there or do I not like it there? And if I don't like it, then I sort of turn it off. This one's fun. We can add that in, and I like the art stroke. Play around with the placement of that. You want to move this up to the top here. And then now, because I turn these on and off, I can kind of bring them back on if I want to and see if they're going to fit better. So I like that because that brings some texture in. And then I think there was, I don't know, there was another transfer here. I did bring it in, but I can't find it. I think it's there. There we go. So I'm going to flip this horizontally. So to do that, I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, and then Flip Horizontal. So that's going to allow me to place that against the edge here. I'm going to move it up and down to see if I can find the best fit. So you can see now we've got kind of a foundation going on. So a place that we can place our photo if we want to. The other thing you can do too is play around with the rotation. So maybe try rotating this counterclockwise, or maybe image, rotate, and then if you want to do, that's much better. So we can have it like that. When you start rotating, you've got to be mindful of the shadows and which direction they go. So I feel like the sun's sort of coming in from the top left-hand side, and I prefer it to come in from it's coming in from the top right-hand side. I prefer it to come in from the top left. So if I go to image and then go to flip horizontal, then we have it kind of an orientation that I'm used to. And this is kind of off now, so I'd have to sort of rotate this around. But it gives you sort of an idea of how you can sort of just change the look based on a few simple edits. You can move this up and down. Kind of like it like that. We've got this kind of harsh edge at the top here. So I think probably what I would do is just take an eraser tool and maybe just carefully go in and try and erase this out. I'm going to do it real quickly right now, but the other option would be to take the blending brush and just kind of blend some of it out too. You could do that. Maybe blend this out too. So you have lots of options on how you can play around. You could also, I'm using the eraser tool just because it's just a quick edit. You can also add a mask and use brushes that way. So yeah, so I'm pretty happy with that foundation, just kind of messing around. I could also, if I wanted to, go and bring in some of those ArtsyTransfers. So I keep those here. So ArtsyTransfers are like the transfers and overlays, but they are delivered in PSD format. And I only deliver them in PSD format and not separate layers because the separate layers don't retain the blending modes that I apply to each of these layers. And B, I feel like there are too many layers here for you to be able to reassemble them yourself. It just doesn't make any sense to include those. So that's why I only include these in PSD format. But they're really cool because you can pull in just small pieces of a transfer. Like this, for example, is kind of fun. And I could use it to align with that leaf in my design. And then I could maybe go back. I'm going to turn off the layers I've already used. So you can see we've got this transfer here. In here, which is the reason I opened it. We've got this fun transfer. This is kind of neat. So maybe we can add that in and drag it down, and that's going to add some fun interest down the bottom here. I could rotate this if I wanted to. I can rotate it this way. Can add it in here. I kind of like it there the best. You can still see some of the edge though. Down at the top here. So again, I would just grab my eraser tool and just kind of smudge that out real fast. What else have we got? We've got some cream paint. So I like to just add in pieces of transfers. You can use the whole transfer, you can just add in pieces, but this is where I'm just kind of combining and just building up my foundation. I think I'm going to call that good. There's a fun little tape texture here. Maybe we'll bring that in. See if we can get that to work. Bring that up to the top here. So again, I can kind of just add these different pieces. And then the more layers that you add, the more complexity you're going to get. Anyway, I think I'm done adding layers. So now I want to add my photo. I could use a photo blend if I wanted to. In this case, I think I'm going to go and grab one of the frames. And I'm particularly fond of this first frame because it's got like 2 frames in it. And I'm hoping it's going to fit nicely on our design. So before I move all these layers over, I'm going to make sure that I have my cursor or the last layer in the layers panel selected so that when I bring all these layers over, they're going to sit directly on top of all these foundation layers. And that actually works pretty well like that. And I'm going to go ahead and group these, and we can rename it by going frame. And this is bothering me here right now, this texture here. See that texture there? So I'm just going to grab my eraser tool. I'm just going to go in there and just kind of just blend that out, just so I don't have that coming in. And then we can go and look at some photos. Kind of bored of those photos now, so oh, we have more. There's Luke when we moved him to Boston last year. I don't know if these are going to work as well. New England photos, but we'll see. Oh, these might work, these beachy photos. So let's just add in. So there's two ways we can work with these frames. So you can work with these frames so that you have one photo spanning both frames, or you can have two different photos in each of the frames. I've lost my, where are those beach photos? Let's make these smaller so we can see them a little better. There's me on the beach. So this one's kind of fun here. Let's bring this one in and see if I can get this to fit. Might be a bit narrow. So this is kind of a panorama that I took using my iPhone on the beach. It was like a little cute little cove. So I'm going to bring my cursor up to the first clipping mask and drag that over. Oh, this is going to be great. And then I'm going to resize this, but I want to be careful when I resize it because I want the photo to extend over the edges of both the frames. So I'm going to narrow it in like that. And then I'm going to go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask. And then I can duplicate that layer again, drag that up and go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask. So I can do that. And then if I wanted to reposition that photo, I'm going to select both the photo layers by clicking on the Control or the Command key. And then I can kind of just move this around. I could also rotate it to a certain extent to get the best fit. I actually liked it how it was before. Yeah. Maybe like that. So I have the photo in there. Whoops, I don't know what I did there. There we go. I think what I would do here is to go ahead and if I edit, typically what I'm going to do is I'm either going to go to Image, Adjustments and Curves. But if you're going to do that, it's best to do it. So let's do it that way. So I'm going to edit this part of the photo, but in order to make sure I have exactly the same, I'm just going to duplicate that, drag it down, and then go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask so that we have the same edits on both of the same photos. And then we can go and add in our title. Let's go to Remember. This is the journey. Let's do that. Got lots of nice space. So a couple of options here, actually. We could put our title over our photo if we wanted to. We have space for it, maybe not, maybe just about. Or there's a lot of space over here. So this is where I'm actually going to place it. And then maybe go ahead and add in kind of more of a complex title, mainly because we've got the space to do that on this side. So I'm going to add in one of those. And it's quite bright as that. So I'm just going to bring down the opacity a little bit. I could also play with the blending modes. You can play a multiply or hard light might work. I think I like normal though, with just a slightly less opacity. And then I might want to bring in one of these wood words. And with these wood words, I definitely recommend that you add a drop shadow to them. So go to Layer, Layer Style, Drop Shadow. And it's given me, it always messes with my angle. I like my angle to be 120 because that has the light coming in from the top left. And then anywhere from 6 to 10 pixels, just to make that pop off the page a little bit. And we've kind of got two of these different stitching areas. So maybe we could kind of create a fun visual triangle. Not with PaperTextures, but with the button threads here. So maybe I bring in one of these button threads. Incidentally, you can load these as brushes. I've just been kind of pulling them in as individual pages. So I can attach or make it look like the stitching has been attached, or make it look like the stitching is attaching the image, the word to the paper. And I can kind of play around with the rotation of that any way you like. So let's do it that way. So we can add that into the mix if we wanted to. I kind of like it like that though, how it was, because it sort of draws the eye down with the other ones. And then maybe we just add a couple of simple elements here. Let's go back to our elements. Maybe use this pressed flower this time. Bring this in. I'm going to drag it into the background again. Select both of those layers. And this is kind of fun tucked in behind the stitching if you can make it work. It's quite a large, so that actually works because there's a little space there. So maybe I add that in and we've got lots of kind of sky space. I could make it a little smaller if I wanted to, adjust the size just a little bit. And what else haven't we used? Let's add some of these word labels in. Got a fun twig here too. I don't know what to bring in first. Let's try this first. So we have this fun twig. So I can bring that in, which always works pretty well with a beach scene. I could also play around with the rotation of that. So I could have it this way. I think I prefer it this way though. Let's do it this way. And then maybe bring in some of these other elements here. I'm going to drag these directly onto my canvas. And then I'm going to add the styles by just clicking on styles that I already have. If you're interested in learning more about the drop shadow styles and the types of styles that I use, I'm going to be including that in the AA Connect on Monday if you can make it. I had a request to go through some of the layer styles that are available in the store. So I'm going to do that. So maybe add these here. And I'm going to have to place them behind that twig. Maybe have them here like this so that we can see them a bit better. I could also split these up too and have them different ways. Have them like that. And then maybe bring this here, maybe. So I just basically just drag and drop things and just sort of move them around. Maybe have that like that. So then we've got this visual. Maybe I'll move these over and then we can kind of create a more cohesive visual triangle. I can make this work. There we go. Maybe add that like that. I really want to add it down here, but well, I guess you could still see it a little bit. The other thing too is I could actually bring it down and have it sort of off the edge of the page. Yeah, it's not working the way I want it to go. So maybe I'm just going to remove those and just not use them. Usually I will mess around with an element for a limited amount of time. And if I can't get it to work, then I'm like, forget it. So maybe we'll bring in this element here and add this over here instead. And I think this will work. That works much better. So now we've got a nice visual triangle that works pretty well. I'd like to kind of get a little bit more connection with this. I feel like this is sort of kind of floating a little bit. So I might just play around with some of these elements to see if I can get them to fill in that sort of space. Add the splatter here like this, maybe. And then I can also go back to any of either the transfers. So transfers are easy to work with because of course you've only got one to deal with. So I can go in there and I can look to see if we have any transfers. This might work, this here. So if I drag this in and then maybe rotate it, I can play around with maybe adding this into the mix. Maybe change the location of it. Maybe play around with different blending modes. Turn it on and off, see if it makes a difference. doesn't really make too much of a difference. So I'll probably keep that off. And then the other option, of course, is to go into the ArtsyTransfers and sort of see if you can bring in, let's see this one here, has a kind of a cool stain to it. And then you can just bring in these different elements individually and see if they kind of make a difference. So that's kind of fun like that. And then you've got that hard line at the top here, but that's easy to get rid of. We can just take that brush and just sweep across. So I'm going to call that done. I probably bring in a little journaling box. In this case, I'm just going to make a journaling box so I don't have to reopen that template. Let's go ahead and close these elements out. So select the type tool. I want to make sure my text is black, and then I'm just going to click, drag, and release, and then it's going to paste in some text here. So I could maybe have a text box there, and then if I want to add more text, maybe I could add some text in down the bottom here. I could add it here or here. If I decide to add text down here and span it across here, I might want to rethink this stitching here. I may want to rotate it like I had previously so that it doesn't interfere with that. But I don't add too much journaling to these sorts of pages, so I'm not too worried about it. The other option is to add this text over here. And then because you can't really see it very well because it's over a dark area, then you just change the color of the text to white. And then that way you can see that much better and it's kind of being hidden. So let's bring it up. There you go, like that. So you can fit some text in there. So you've got two lots of text. Go ahead and save that as our, there we go, New England Beach. So there's 3 layouts for you using the Noetic collection. A couple of questions here, or a couple of, so the paper textures are one of the companion sets. So if you go to the blog at Anna Aspinus Designs, and you go and you click on the ArtPlay Palette Noetic collection, then it shows you the collection here. So this is the collection and this gets released first. And then it gives you the details about the different sales options. And then it gives you a close-up preview of all the products that are included in the collection, plus the bonus. And then on the Wednesday, I add the companion set. So down in the companion set, you can see that includes the ArtsyTransfers, the ArtsyKardz, the PaperTextures, and the button threads. And they're all on sale until the next collection releases. So it looks like, there you go. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for coming, everybody. We got that done really fast. Hopefully you like the collection, that you, hopefully you found some of the inspiration helpful today. It's definitely a fun one to play with. I didn't think that I'd be able to match beach photos with this collection, but as you can see, it can be done. So any questions before I leave?
Thanks.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for coming. Got a bunch of people. I'm amazed at how many people came. That's awesome. So Kathy says that was great. You're welcome. I hope it gave you some ideas on how to play. And I suppose with it being Friday night, you guys can all play now. I'm going to check into the AA Project Facebook group and then get some dinner and then just chill out for the rest of the evening, I think. So yeah, I really like this collection. I think next week I'm going to start working on a Christmas collection. So if you have any ideas for colors that you want to see, I'm going to be kind of playing around, coming up with some concepting on Sunday, so I'm ready to hit that on Monday. Yeah, and Kim says it's dinner time where she is too. I know it's dinner time here. It's just me though, so I probably will just find something in the fridge to snack on. So yeah. Great. Okay, well, I'm not going to be uploading this tonight, but sometime over the weekend, I'll try and get this uploaded to the YouTube channel, and then you guys will be able to rewatch it in your own time. And I hope you have a great weekend. Hope you get to create something fun, and I will see you back in the space again soon. Okay, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.